Good evening, Shabbat Shalom, and welcome. It is a pleasure to get to celebrate Shabbat tonight in the context of community. That opening song we heard is by musician Jacob Spike Krause, who will be joining us along with Rebecca Closson and student cantor Sierra Fox for the High Holy Days coming up all too soon. The month of Elul starts soon, like now and tomorrow and Sunday, and that means we're in the 1 month spiritual countdown to the High Holy Days, and it is a pleasure to be together in community this evening, recognizing not only that, but the start of our Shabbat service as well. We begin on page 10, welcoming one another, recognizing how good it is to be together tonight.
Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad.
And as we prepare for the start of the school year, maybe that's why this next song was on our minds. I'm not entirely sure. When our visiting musician Alain Jagoda was in town, she offered a prayer before the kindling of the Shabbat lights. Bring in the light of Shabbat. And we say these words. I was burned a little bit by technology last week as I was running around, and so I didn't try to get fancy with the screens. Unfortunately, these words aren't in your prayer book, but if you've heard them before, we invite you to join with us, or simply to allow them to wash over you as we mentally and spiritually prepare to kindle the lights of Shabbat.
Bring in the light, bring in the light, bring in the light of Shabbat. We light the lights of Shabbat. Again. Bring in the light, bring in the light, bring in the light of Shabbat. Lechad likner shel Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. May you have a peaceful day. Shabbat Shalom. May you have a restful day. Bring in the light, bring in the light, bring in the light of Shabbat. We light the lights of Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. As we watch the candles shine, Shabbat Shalom. Cover the challah, pour the wine. Bring in the light, bring in the light, bring in the light of Shabbat. We light the lights of Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. Time to take a big deep breath. Shabbat Shalom. A special day for us to rest. Bring in the light, bring in the light, bring in the light of Shabbat. We light the lights of Shabbat. Lechad likner shel Shabbat.
And indeed, we turn to do just that on page 2 in your Siddur, as it's an honor to invite forward Cantorina Shapiro to light the lights of Shabbat. I recommend holding both the candle and the holder.
Thanks for the tip.
might need an assist here.
There you go.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'lishonu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu le'adlik ner shel
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Cantor. And we turn to page 5 in our prayer book. If it is comfortable for you to rise, I invite you to do so as we welcome the sweetness of Shabbat together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho me'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zicharon l'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila l'mikra'e kodesh zecher letziat Mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta v'otanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shabbat kodshecha me'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. L'chaim. You're welcome to be seated as we continue singing a new song. The words of Psalm 96 on page 13 are they themselves ancient, but how well we recognize when we enter Shabbat, each of us with a different feeling in our heart from week to week, with a different sense of community with which we celebrate. We offer a new song each and every time we enter into prayer. Shiru l'Adonai, Shir Hadash, let all of the earth sing.
Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz, Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz, Shiru Adonai shir chadash. Sing unto God all the earth a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God and we'll all sing along. All the earth a new song unto God. Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz, Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz, Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash. I will sing unto God a new song.
And on pages 20 and 21 in our prayer book, Our singing to welcome Shabbat begins its culmination, welcoming the Sabbath bride into our midst with words of Lecha Dodi, imagining that there is a personification of Shabbat entering this room to be with us. And our time together will continue with verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. And of course, when we get to that final verse, rising, turning, welcoming Shabbat, as one might do someone they were excited to greet. Pages 20 and 21.
Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamur v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmianu elcham yuchad, Adonai echad u'shmo echad, L'shem el tiferet v'litila, Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nilcha, Ki himkur habracha, Merosh mekedem nesucha, Sof maseh b'machashva techila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoriri, kiva orech, kumi uri, shir daberi, kavod Adonai alayich nigla. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, Gam b'simcha ub'tzachola, Toch emunei am segula. Boi chala, Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela.
Having welcomed Shabbat, we turn now to welcoming one another, turning to the people beside you to wish them a Shabbat Shalom.
Sorry. Oops.
And I invite you to find your seats when you are ready as we continue our welcoming, turning to page 24, welcoming God's angels to be with us this Shabbat as well.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. Malachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boechem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malachei HaMlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu ni l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Ni melech Malachei HaYachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malachei HaMlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
In the teeny tiny print on the bottom, very bottom of page 25. And so we understand that ordinary people are messengers of the Most High. They go about their tasks in holy anonymity, often even unknown to themselves. Yet if they had not been there, if they had not said what they said or did what they did, it would not be the way it is now. We would not be the way we are now. Never forget that you, too, yourself, may be a messenger, perhaps even one whose errand extends over several lifetimes. Page 26. Yitkada v'yitkada shemei Rabba v'amad yivrachirte v'yamlich malchute b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayedecho Beit Yisrael Bagala, Bagala, Uvizman Kariv, Vimeru, Amen. Yeshme Rabba Mevarach, Alam La Me'amaya, Yitparach, V'yishabach, V'yipar, V'yitramam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitalev, V'yithalal, Shemei D'Kudusha, Leila Mincho Birchata V'shirata, Tushbechata V'nechemata, Damiran B'alma, V'meru, Amen. As we turn to page 28 in our prayer book, I invite you to rise if it is comfortable to do so.
Lie, la, 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 lie. Lie, la, 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 lie. Lie, la, 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 lie. Lie, la, 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 lie. Lie, la, 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 lie. Lie, la, 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 lie. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach HaMevorach Leolam Vaed HaMevorach HaMevorach Leolam Vaed.
Would you join me in the English on the top of page 29? There is one who sings a song of his own life, finding everything within himself. There is one who leaves a circle of herself and sings the songs of her people. There is one whose voice rings with the song of humanity, hoping for the highest perfection. And there is one who rises even higher, uniting with all creatures, with all worlds, filling the universe with song, Nivarech, let us bless. And on the top of page 33. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. You may be seated. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha. V'hayu hadvarim ha'ela asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'aderech uv'shochbecha uv'gumecha Ukshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu l'totafot b'neinecha Uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim le'elohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem. Responsively on the bottom of page 39. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and on earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea. We continue on page 40.
Mi chamocha ba'alim Adonai, mi kamocha neder b'kodesh, norati lot osef eleh, norati lot osef Malchutecha ra'uvanecha bokeyam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam ze'eli anu ve'amru Adonai imloch le'olam Adonai Imloch Leolam Vaed. Yai lai 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 yai lai 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 Adonai Imloch Leolam Vaed. Adonai Imloch Leolam Vaed.
Bottom of page 43, we read together. Give us a place to rest, Adonai our God. Bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you are true protection and safety, and in your presence are acceptance and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. And on the top of page 44, recognizing the covenant, the blessing of Shabbat, which gives us that opportunity to take a deep breath at the end of each and every week, we sing together.
Veshamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam b'rit olam. Veshamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam b'rit olam. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti leolam, oti leolam. Veshamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam b'rit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai, asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et haaretz. Veshamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam b'rit olam. Uvayom hashvi shavat v'inafash, shavat v'inafash, shavat v'inafash. Veshamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam b'rit olam.
We are a people in whom the past endures, in whom the present is inconceivable without moments gone by. The Exodus lasted a moment enduring forever. What happened once upon a time happens all the time. We continue on page 46 and following with the start of our Shabbat Amidah. If it is comfortable for you to do so, I invite you to rise as together we join in prayer. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei Hakol, Ve'zocher Chasdei Avot V'imahot, Umevi Gula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo B'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh hakol atah Rav le'hoshia, Morid hatal, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechayeh hakol berachamim rabim. Somech noflim ve'rofeh cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afar, Michamocha bal gevurot, Umido melach, Melech memit umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah lachayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, U'kdoshim b'chol yom yaluch hasela. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. We continue with the remaining blessings from this section of our service, which can be found through page 62 in our prayer book. I invite you to continue with the traditional words of prayer found on the page, or with the silent prayers and meditations that can only come from each of our own hearts. And when you have finished your silent prayer this evening, I invite you to be seated. We continue on the bottom of page 62 with words offering a prayer for peace.
O say shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
As we enter the month of Elul, the month of preparation for the high holy days, it causes us to recognize, perhaps, when we start the process of thinking back on our actions, how fragile the experience of being human, how well we recognize those mistakes that we have made, those moments we wish we had back. And when we do so, we recognize the fragility of life and the fleetingness of all of life's moments. So too it is when we turn in our prayer book for Mishaberach Lecholim on page 253. Moments of sickness, moments of illness force us to recognize the fragility of our bodies and our time here on earth. We pray for healing. We offer our hands to be activists in that healing process for others. And if there are those you are thinking of who may be experiencing a time of fragility this evening, I would invite you to share their name aloud as we continue with our Mishaberach prayer together. Baruch atah Adonai Rofeh HaCholim. May God bring a measure of comfort and healing to all of those we've named aloud and those whom we hold in our hearts.
Misheberach Avotenu Mekor HaBraha Source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach Imotenu Mekor HaBraha Avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach Avotenu Mekor HaBraha Imotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen.
This week's Torah portion, Rabbi, which has a special place in my little heart from 27 years ago, though hopefully my understanding of its nuances have grown and changed since I was 13. This week's Torah portion is quite concerned with the before and the after of nation building. Moses cautions in Deuteronomy 12 that when the Israelites realize safety and security in their land, they must be sure not to forget the Levites and others in their care, which would effectively allow Israelite society to crumble. Moses reminds them that when they get settled, if they get complacent, they shouldn't allow their observances of the dietary laws to lapse. And when the ancient Israelites saw the ritual practices of the surrounding nations, Moses warned them, don't allow yourself to be led astray or to seek to emulate their behaviors. These are all important words, not only for an Israelite society trying to remain faithful to God, but a seemingly prescient understanding of human behavior. As human beings, we are prepared to work hard to accomplish that which is important to us, to suffer challenges and to put up with discomfort for a greater end, to traverse 40 years in the wilderness to get to that promised land. But too often, we grow complacent when we finally achieve our goal. Some 2,500 years later, Bar-Ilan University professor Dr. David Passing is worried about the same thing as Moses in Israeli society today. Israel is at a crossroads, he said. For 60 years, the various groups and sects who were living here were able to put aside our differences for the sake of building the nation. Now that we've found our balance, we need to define who we are and what we stand for. Our survival depends upon it. When faced with an external threat, people and nations tend to unify. Lacking such a threat in times of safety, we become complacent and fracture into our component parts. As an aside this evening, please don't hear my words as diminishing some of the threats the modern-day nation-state of Israel faces. I'm only sharing the words of an Israeli who believes that Israel is solidly, irrevocably here. Dr. Passig is a futurist by training. Really, that's a thing. He earned a PhD in future studies from the University of Minnesota. And he believes that the biggest threat to Israel is internal. Too many competing visions for Israel's future based on the self-interest of each constituency. One need look no further than the upcoming Israeli election for evidence of this phenomenon. And we likely don't even need to look that far. The same fragmentation and competing visions could be said about the America we live in, couldn't it? Israeli educator and comedian Joel Chasnoff suggests that there is a strategy, if not an answer, embedded in this week's Torah portion, and indeed in what it is to be a people. The Hebrew word am he offers, 2 letters, ayin, mem, is a really short word that means nation or people. But the very same word has a very different meaning when used in a different context. Ayin mem am means people or nation. Ayin mem im means with. More important than safety from external threats, more important than living in a certain place with certain laws, from a perspective of nation building, is ensuring that a people lives with one another as opposed to living opposed to one another. And that's ultimately what it is to be a people and a nation, right? A collective bigger than ourselves. Im, am, with those around us. An inability to do so, to be so, weakens a people more than external threats ever could. Dr. Passing suspects it's going to take another generation for Israel to figure out its identity, though I suspect the exercise will happen continually in each and every generation. It's excruciating to watch, isn't it? And indeed, as I have mentioned, I think there are parallels here in America, and we know how excruciating that is to live through. Yet, both Israel and America, both political parties, both factions in both places, we are here. With relative safety and with security, who and what can we live with? Where do we draw the lines of peoplehood and nationhood? For both countries to be ultimately successful, we need to figure out how to be both im, with, and am, together as a people, even when doing so seems impossible. Moses would be the first one to tell you it's a long, arduous journey through that desert. And he charged the Israelites when they were attempting to figure this out, just as we are charged by this week's Torah portion today. Don't forget the Levites or the vulnerable in your care. Don't allow observance of your highest principles to lapse. Don't emulate the behaviors of others who would seek to lead us astray. And then may we, as Israelites and Americans, usmachtem b'chol mishlach yadchem asher berechecha Adonai Elohecha, may we be blessed in our undertaking in which God has blessed us. And may we realize someday, one day, that the only way to be am, a people, is to be im, figuring it out with one another. Shabbat Shalom. Not often I get to learn both Hebrew grammar and a valuable lesson from a comedian. Joel Chasnov is an amazing comedian who is writing a new book about 75 facets of Israeli life that one wouldn't see from the outside, that deepens his experience of living in Israel, and he would argue would deepen our experience of living in America to know about. We'll see if we can get him when he is on his national tour. Far before that, though, I invite you to turn back in your prayer book this evening. On the bottom of page 282, we find words of Alain Uleshabach as we begin to conclude our service. Alain Uleshabach, page 282. When you find your page, I would invite you to rise. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'tet gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kuye haratzot, velo samanu kimishbechot hadama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'goralinu kechol hamonam, V'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. Page 287. V'nemar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol ha'aretz Bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. You may be seated. Words of Kaddish Yatom, our Mourners Kaddish, can be found in your prayer book on page 294. In preparation for these words, we remember those upon whose shoulders we stand this Shabbat. We mourn the death of Mary Lou Katz, who was laid to rest in recent days, and observe the period of Shaloshim for Alain Cobbett and Evelyn Hausman Morris. This Shabbat, we mark the yahrzeit of the commemoration of the passing of Doris L. Klaitman, Ruth Ehrenrich, Sharna Fabricant, Mark A. Goldberg, Meyer Goldblum, Kenneth Goldman, Elizabeth Goldstein, Richard Goodman, Martha Hirsch Green, Jeanette Herman, Fanny Katz, Louise Kepsia, Elia Khalili, Phyllis Kindler, Sylvia Lee Kozel, Bernice Dolly Lande, Leonard Levick, Rose Linder, Joseph Moydell, Brett Morgenstern, Edward Perlstein, Mary Plung, Mildred Press, Sean Cyan Rasmussen, Carol Rothis, Anna Sis Samowich, Dr. Sidney Saul, Jean Schechter, Stephen A. Schwartz, Melvin Shapiro, Abe Shore, Abe Silverman, Gail Silvert, Barbara Tabak, Harry Weiser, Marvin Williams, and Harold Wintner. Gail Silvert, Barbara Tabak, Harry Weiser, Marvin Williams, and Harold Wintner. If there are others you are remembering this Shabbat, or if I have inadvertently mispronounced the name of a loved one, I would invite you to share their names at this time. Yehei zichronam livracha. May the memory of our loved ones be for us an everlasting blessing. We affirm words of Kaddish Yatom, our Mourners Kaddish, on page 294, and I'd invite you to rise if you are able. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chaye chon u'vyome chon u'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shemei d'kudsha barich hu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimramav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. May God, who makes peace in the highest of heavens, make peace for us and for all who mourn. I invite you to be seated. Hopefully, in the mail this week, you have received your High Holiday magazine laying out what we hope this year will be our plans. Last year when we sent it out, the world had other plans, but this year we are fairly certain in our ability to move forward with High Holiday services as planned, with an in-person masked optional service in the sanctuary, with this space, our Beit HaTefilah, with the service live streamed on the screens for those who wish an entirely masked environment for the holidays. And of course, we'll continue to live stream on Facebook and on YouTube for those who are unable to make it to the congregation. But far before we get to those holidays, there are many preparatory sessions during the month of Elul designed to get us thinking, to cause us to reflect, to allow us to offer the penitential prayers of our tradition. Our new program and volunteer coordinator, Sarah Mangan, has put together a reflective exercise in the month of Elul. I'll be offering a class with some of the texts of our tradition, causing us to think and reflect. And on the night of Slichot, which I believe is September 17th, we would invite you, along with the Beth El community, to a dessert reception and an opportunity to be with our High Holy Day musicians as they work and prepare and spend time together in preparation for the holidays to come. If you have questions about any of the various things taking place during the month of Elul, the things we have planned for the High Holy Days, to RSVP for those experiences like Tashlich and Tacos or our kids program, I would invite you to contact us here at the temple, and I look forward to seeing you as we start a new year together. A tremendous thank you to you, Rebecca, for helping to lead our service this evening. Leslie, as always, and to everyone who has joined us for the service. If you're in person, I hope you'll join us for a cookie and a nosh immediately following. If you're with us on Zoom, I hope you have something tasty at home you can nosh on to celebrate the sweetness of Shabbat. I would invite you to turn in our prayer books for one final song, a blessing as we go from this space, page 338.
Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo, Adonai yivarech et amo. Shalom, Adonai yivarech et amo, v'shalom, v'shalom. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai Adonai yivarech et amo.
Shabbat Shalom.